Hello, my name is Esther Seijas Villadangos. I'm full professor of constitutional law in the University of León, Spain. I'm very pleased of taking part in the second seminar of the Constitutional Observatório research project, Constitutional Pluralism and Subnational Constitutionalism, organized by the State and Politics Research Group of the Federal University of Mato Grosso do Sul, and coordinated by Professor Luis Fernando Escarbosa. Thank you very much, Professor. The title of my presentation is The Challenges of State Constitutionalism from a Federation in Construction, Spain. The two key issues I'm going to develop are the following: the consideration and conversion of Spain into a federal state, and secondly, the role of subnational state constitution in that challenge. I want to contextualize my presentation. This is linked to a long and lasting research activity devoted to the study of federalism and federation, and especially my two last research stages in Rutgers University, Camden, in the Center for State Constitution with the supervision of Robert Williams, and in Melbourne, in the Center for Comparative Constitutional Law last autumn with Terence Sanders' advice. The developing debate in Spain about our conversion into a federal state has not acquired an even greater relevance. Federalism as a process of federalization is subject to several descriptions with different intentions. The federalization of Spain implies a previous transition to federalism from a virtual field to a real field. We will review the main features in this transition. The debate about federalism in Spain has experienced an extraordinary growth in relevance in recent years. However, this approach has acquired a new dimension with the referendum of separation of Catalonia and its challenge to Spanish constitutional order. The first dilemma of our proposal reflects the tension between the current status quo and the future, whether to preserve the successfully existing autonomous system, more or less workability, versus the desire to adopt a federal system. The long shadow of federalism has been projected over our state with different degrees of intensity from the very moment of the creation of the Spanish autonomous system. However, we must recognize that the unique reference to federation in the Spanish Constitution of 1978 is negative. According to the section 145.1, under no circumstances shall a federation of autonomous communities be allowed. This has been described as the principle of non-federality of Spanish territorial organization. Nevertheless, it's very common that Spain has been considered federal, especially for academics. Spain is a federation in no bad name, told Daniel Eliezer. Spain could be considered a federalism in the making or a federal system in practice, Michael Vargas, or a protagonist of an unfulfilled federalism. Different substantive features of a Spanish territorial system support this conceptualization. Firstly, Spain has a system of shared powers, according to section 148 and 149 of our Constitution. Secondly, the process of preparing a status of autonomy followed a covenant pattern with keenly felt federal nature, especially according to section 140 and 51.2. Thirdly, This federal nature is strength when we pay attention to the model of financing autonomous community, especially in the cases of the Basque Country and Navarra. Or if we pay attention to the autonomy especially endorsed for the Navarra Foral Autonomous Community. Finally, the first final clause of our article refers to the share of powers, and for closing the system, it's very close to a federal proposal. We are talking about the three last point of the Article 149. Matters not expressly assigned to the state by this Constitution might fall under the jurisdiction of the autonomous community by virtue of their status of autonomy. Reconsidering these characteristics, we can maintain that Spain is a virtual federal state, almost or nearly as described, but not completely or according to a strict definition of federation. Consequently, we could consider the federal appearance of the Spanish autonomous system. The hitherto backward-looking review of Spanish decentralization leads us to the next step. We will try to outline the main steps to complete or fulfill our federation, the federal transition in Spain. In order to do so, we must first highlight that the origin of regionalization and our virtual transformation into a federal state is clearly driven by the pressure of certain territories. We are talking about Catalonia and the Basque Country. The pressure of these territories in favor of their separation. Those territories have impelled and tried to break away and disperse Spanish territorial organization. For this reason, one of the adjectives related to Spanish federalism is asymmetrical federalism. From a formal point of view, we have two alternatives, a constitutional reform or, in a second place, a constitutional implementation in a federal sense, federal reform versus federal mutation, according to constitutional classic term of mutation. The former option, a formal amendment of our Constitution, will lead us to follow the rule process fixed in the Title 10 of the Spanish Constitution. The latter option, mutation, would consist of interpreting the Constitution and the states of autonomy in a federal way, deconstitutionalization, a constitutional change without a formal constitutional reform. This option has been reinforced in Spain from the 8th and 9th legislatures from 2004 until the present days, with the reforms of several statutes of autonomy. We are talking about the Statute of Autonomy of Valencia, Aragon, Illes Balears, Catalonia, Andalucía, Castilla y León, Extremadura, and finally Canary Islands in 2018, and by the absence of a general consensus between the major political forces in Spain. In addition, we need to underline that the current fragmentation of our parliament. This is a very important factor that we must consider. This is the reference to the importance and the meaning of a state constitution in Spain. From a material perspective, the first proposal is to achieve a global consensus with the same degree of support that the Constitution of 1978. That substantial change we have to include at least the following topics: identification of the federal states, a reform of the Senate in a symmetrical way following the United States pattern, or in an asymmetrical way, but never dissymmetrically. This expression This symmetry, that is different to asymmetry, refers to exorbitant consequences of differential facts. This is very important in our speech about the transformation of Spain into a federal state. 3 basic steps in that transition could be: first, the creation of a federal culture. The main target is to prepare the civilized society to assume the values of federalism, connected to stability and unity. Political forces must communicate these ideas to the citizens in order to build a leadership culture linked to federal ideas. It could be a basic step that federal proposal, federal culture would be able to gain the same support in Spain that currently nationalist culture. We can use this dramatic period with coronavirus for discovering the advantages of managing this fight with common patterns, but not as a tool of re-centralization. Second, definition of the main characters and the main scenarios of the federal evolution in Spain. An advanced Spanish federal map would be a focus on asymmetry and the union of a functional federalism and what we call a national or asymmetrical federalism, in the redefinition of the current autonomous system, where the differences could be minimized and linked only to real differential facts. We are at the moment when the welfare and health of all the citizens must prevail. It could have to fight with the strong desires of self-determination that we find in some autonomous community and the lack of confidence in federalism and federation from the central autonomous community. The main challenge is making asymmetry workable and fair. Third, translating the proposal to a legal challenge, especially at constitutional level. The last point in this journey towards a federal Spain is to consolidate at constitutional level and from the point of view of its legitimacy with equally high degree of support with the present constitution has enjoyed since its approval in 1978. It's important to underline this message. To federalize Spain does not mean weakening it. Neither does. It means opening the door to disintegration or secession. Federalism is not the path to secession. Ronald Watts' message: this is a clear pathology of federal states. Federalism means to emphasize union in a non-centralized way. The resource of asymmetry is a very useful tool for achieving harmonization, for managing the conflict. Asymmetry is not an end in itself. In this answer, we need to focus the need of creation states constitutions. What are the main advantages of a state constitutionalism in this transition to federalism? According to Marshall, there is only a small group of federations, exactly 14 federations, that allow a state constitution. For instance, Australia, Brazil, United States. Some of federal states have rejected the idea of introducing a state constitution. We can quote the case of Nigeria. What was the reason for considering them a potential divisive strength of the old state, the potential divisive strength of a state constitution? Instead, we must recognize that the root of the most relevant federations in the world, for instance, United States of America, started from state constitution, We can go back to 1776, thinking about Maryland or New Jersey. So the option for Spain is clearly to introduce a state constitution in our process of federalization. A state constitution supports a federalism with the following feathers: progressive and inclusive. A state constitution will increase the federal culture in Spain. In addition, its nature and essence must be mandatory instead directory. We consider the importance of real state constitution in our legal order. Its structure and content should be a classic division between an organic and dogmatic part. We must introduce in this state constitution a very important rights catalog. Then we pay attention to the organic part. We need to focus the content of this state constitution in the peculiarities of division of powers, the form of government, electoral system, and finally a flexible amendment procedure. We call for state constitution were applied by courts. We dream about a Spanish version of a new judicial federalism, according Brennan, and we can see an increasing presence of a state constitution in the judicial interpretation of rights, and with this, a great application of a state constitution. The most important feature of a state constitution must be the Charter of Rights. There we can find them as the best ally to strengthen the role of the state constitution in the procedure of federalization of Spain. We propose another important content of the state constitution. This refers to the part that we call economic constitution, to introduce in them the clause TELS, tells, tax and expenditure limits. It's very important in the economic frameworks where we can apply a federal model, especially with the limits and the restrictions that are imposed to Spain from the European Union, and especially that we are going to propose that federal transition in a program of recovery from coronavirus high economic crisis. Our final reflection is devoted to the amending procedure of a state constitution. How can we amend this state constitution by federal states or subnational constitution? This amending process must attend to the evolution of social life and the political and cultural demands of the citizens of each state. But we can find or we can feel in the obsession if we think in the American state constitution. They don't really like to amend. They love to tinker, to introduce small pieces of changes in the constitution day to day, every day, with close to 500 amendments in the life of one constitution. We clearly defend the rejection of a vulgarization of constitution. For instance, to include in this state constitution the design of roads, infrastructures, casinos, or horse races. No, this is not the place for that ordinary changes that must be passed by executive authorities. So, we cannot admit that the state constitution become political pamphlets. Related to the procedure of amending this state constitution, we sustain the increase of constitutional convention. This is a mechanism very weird to Spanish tradition. It's very interesting. It's very experiencing, for instance, Canada, United States, the States, or for instance, very close to Spain in Ireland. With this framework of constitutional convention, we can add popular ideas directly get from citizens with legal and representative balance. So we can avoid the inconvenience of the gap of representation in the current time. Our conclusion is to underline the need of a new theory of state constitutionalism because we consider it has different paradigms of general constitutional law. We can remember the question. The question was asked by Alan Turing and Robert Williams. They say, in Spain, for example, are the regional autonomy status constitutions or not? They do seem to exhibit some of the attributes of constitution, but that term is studiously avoided in Spain. We need first to introduce a federal design in our constitution, in the state constitution. Then we can transform the nature of our status of autonomy according to the principle of loyalty and supremacy to national constitution. They will be passed only for state legislatures. They don't need to be passed by the central parliament. This state's constitution will help to fill the deficit of federal culture in Spain. Both constitutional, national and subnational constitution are the warranty of democracy in Spain. We need a federal pattern adapted to our special needs. So we claim for a resilient federalism, a federal pattern adapted to the Spanish needs and Spanish peculiarities. But we must sustain the slogan in unum pluribus. We need to balance unity and diversity, the essence of a federation. I wish that our dilemmas, may have contributed to this effort. One of the most drastic decisions is backed by a coercive federalism. We have a reference to the type of federalism in the Article 155 of our Constitution. This is a legal response whose greatest virtue is its constitutional recognition. The concept of federalism has been a major panacea in Western political thought for an incredible range of problems. I'm quoting Charles Dudley Tarleton, the father of asymmetrical federalism. In the future, it's possible for Spain to become federal, and this federalism could be an asymmetrical, resilient federalism based on democratic dialogue, a union forged by negotiation and renegotiation and far away from coercion. I have told, he dicho, thank you very much for your attention.